This presentation is going to look at the different types of loops available in C. So we're going to start and look at the standard while loop. All loops have three big parts. They've got an initialization, they have a condition which checks whether the loop should continue, they have some kind of an update which changes the variable that is used to determine when the loop should exit. The while loop is a loop that continues and goes around and does the body again and again as long as the condition is true. The initialization for the while loop is done before the loop begins, and here we're setting I to be 0. The condition is that the loop continues as long as I is less than 3. Inside the loop, we do some work, which in this case is simply a print statement. And just before the end of a loop, we update the variable which controls whether the loop should continue. And then that goes around, does the check again. And if it's true, it does the body. And it continues to do that until the condition becomes false. And then it goes to the statement immediately after the end of the loop. So that is the standard while loop. It does the condition check at the start of the loop. Now, the do while loop is a variation on this, and it comes in and it doesn't do a check. Here we're going to say enter a positive number, 0 to exit. It is going to read a number, which is actually going to update, in this case, the value it uses to determine whether it should continue the loop. It then has to do some work based on the value of I, but it doesn't want to deal with a 0, so we have to put it in an if so that it doesn't accidentally process a 0. And we do the loop while I is greater than 0. Now this has the effect, because we do the test at the very end, it means that it has to go through the entire loop at least once before it does the test. So there are situations where it may not really need to do the loop, but it has to do it at least once because it does the check at the end. So you may think that a do while would not go at all, but they have to go at least once, because even if they shouldn't have worked, it's not until they do the check at the end that they find out that they shouldn't have gone through the loop, and then it's too late. So we put our condition at the end. The update is usually done somewhere in the middle of the loop, and if there's work that shouldn't be done, if we hit our terminating condition, we have to put an if in there to make sure we skip over it. One of the most convenient loops is the for loop, and the for loop puts for, and it's got 3 statements right in the for statement. It's got an initialization, which is performed once when the loop begins. It's got a condition, which is checked at the start of a loop every time the loop goes through. And it's got an update, which is done at the end of the loop every time through the loop. So here's an example. We say for I equals 0 and j equals 1. Now, by putting a comma between 2 statements, I can do 2 statements at once before I had the semicolon. So this is the initialization, which is done once before the beginning of the loop. Next, I have my condition while I is less than 2. And then I have my update, and I'm going to update both I and j. Inside the loop, it's going to print out the value of I and j so that you can see them both change. So I is going to go 0, 1, and j, because it starts out at 1 and gets incremented, will go 1 and 2. We can also run a for loop backwards, if you will. So instead of counting up, it counts down. So I can say for I equals 5, and I only have one statement in its initialization, while I is greater than 0, and now instead of doing an I plus plus, I do an I minus minus, and I print out I, and then at the end, I'm going to print out the word blast off because it's going to count down and then blast off. Finally, we have nested loops. And a nested loop is when you put one loop inside another. So the body of the outer for loop has got a for loop in it. And we initialize the inner for loop to set j to be the value of I, which is set by the outer for loop. And it says while j is greater than 0, do a j minus minus, and it's going to print out that. So this runs once, and then for every time through the body of the outer loop, the inner loop goes through multiple times. This turns out to be useful, particularly when we're processing arrays, and we'll be talking about that more when we get to the section on arrays. Let's run this and compare the output with the code. So it says enter a positive number. I'll just enter 1, and when I do while loop, I'll put the 0 in, and now it prints out the rest of it. So let's take a look comparing it to the code. So our standard while loop up here produces 0, 1, and 2, and that's because we set our I to be 0. It says while it's less than 3, and it prints out standard while, the value of I. So it goes through with 0, then 1, then 2, then it makes it 3, and comes back up here and it says, is 3 less than 3? And the answer is no, it's not. So it exits the loop and goes on to the do while loop. Now in the do while loop, it says enter a positive number, 0 to exit. So I scan F my number, I put in 1. It says that's greater than 0, so it prints out you typed, which is what we see up here. And then that's greater than 0. We go around again, we enter another positive number. This time we enter 0. It's not greater than 0, so we don't print it out, and it terminates the loop because it is false on the loop condition. So that's what happens up there. Now the nested, the for loop with initialization is this one, and I goes 0 and 1, and j goes 1 and 2 because they're both incremented. Initialized to 0 and 1, and then they're incremented every time, and it stops when I hits 1. Now the blast off one is actually pretty simple because it is simply counting down. It goes 5 as long as it's greater than 0, and it does an auto or a post decrement every time. So it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It stops before it hits 0 because when it does, it's going to go through and make it 0, but it finds out that 0 is not greater than 0, so it leaves. Prints out the 3 dots and then the word blast off. Okay, which brings us to probably the most confusing of them all, the nested loop. And the nested loop shows its output here, and it says I is 1, j is 1, I is 2, j is 2, I is 2, j is 1. So the outer loop goes through I equals 0, then 1, then 2. But we never saw I equals 0. And the reason is because it says for j equals I. So the very first time, it's going to set j equal to 0 because that's what I is. And it says, is j greater than 0? And the answer is no, it's not. So it leaves that loop immediately because this does the test at the beginning. And because we set j to be the value of I when I was 0, it never printed out the case where I was 0 because j became 0 and it didn't execute the inner loop, therefore it didn't execute the print statement. Goes around again, this time I is 1, sets j to be 1, 1 is greater than 0, it prints out 1, 1 for I and j, Then it decrements j at the end of its loop, comes around, finds it's 0, goes around the outer loop, makes it 2. So I is now 2, sets j to be 2, that's greater than 0, prints out the 2 and 2. Then it goes around again, prints out 2 and 1, exits the inner loop, goes around, and now I becomes 3 and it exits the outer loop. And that's the end of it. So those are the common forms of loops available in C.